We all want to see results from our guitar practice. In this video, I'm going to show you why practicing slow is the key to getting better at guitar. Welcome back to Relax and Learn Guitar. I'm Kevin and this is Maggie May. Just another one treat day again.
Yeah.
My wife Vicky's behind the camera.
Hello.
Let's get started on this lesson. If you watch any of my videos, you have heard me say a million times, learn it correctly first and quickly later. I really believe that. A couple of weeks ago, we put a video out where we'd ask our members their top tips for beginners. We'll leave a link in the description below for that video, along with a link about our membership option if you're interested. But one of those really stuck out to me, and it was very simple, like don't run until you can walk. So I'm taking that concept and really getting into much more detail because I think it's really valuable to learn how to practice your guitar slowly. So a couple of steps you can take when you are applying this principle. The first one is to find that trouble spot. Shouldn't be too hard to do when we're playing and there's something that doesn't work out. I'm just going to give a couple of examples. Let's say that you are new to bar chords and you're really trying to get those bar chords to ring out clearly. That might be a trouble spot for you to focus on. Let's say that you are trying to learn a certain pattern to a picking pattern for a song. That could be a trouble spot. Maybe it's changing chords smoothly. That's a big one for a lot of us. Whatever it is, you want to find that trouble spot. Once you've found that trouble spot, you want to break it down into tiny little pieces. So let's use the example of learning a pattern. So there's a little Simple Man. I've got a lesson for that one as well that you can check out when you're done with this one if you're interested in learning this song. But it's one that I personally really had to really break down and learn how to play that picking pattern correctly. So I've identified the trouble spot. I'm going to break down, and I'm going to start with the C chord, for example, for that picking pattern. After you've broken that down, you want to then slow it down. And what do I mean by that? Like, how slow is slow? If you're using a metronome for a song, or might be the most common thing, try backing that down to half the speed of the song. For this example, I started going this slow to get this correct. I would find a spot, oh, that's not exactly right, so then I would just do that again. When I have my metronome playing at half the speed of that song, a lot of times it's the fast stuff that gives us the most trouble. And the thought is that, I want to learn this so I can play it and sound great, but slowing down those difficult pieces is how you get there. So step number 4 is to be repetitive. And I'm not talking, I always say, like, annoy your friends and neighbors. Vicky is very patient. There are times when I'll be learning something and she's heard it over and over and over and over. So like, how repetitive do you need to be? I'm a big believer in little pieces, so the little things really add up. So you don't want to work on something to where you just get frustrated and you're like, forget it, I'm never doing that again. When I say repetitive, it might make that part of your practice routine for that thing you're working on, and maybe practice it for like 3 minutes, 5 minutes. That's a long time when you're playing something on guitar. But you do have to kind of get through the slow pieces to get to the speed that you want to have. And the 5th step is you can always use the little cog, the little speed wheel on the YouTube videos, and you can slow down any video you're watching to really kind of pay attention to what they're doing if there's pieces that are kind of going over your head. So what we practice lasts. So if you practice something, I don't want to say wrong, a different way, I guess it could be the wrong way. There's not a lot of wrong things on guitar. I also believe If it sounds good, it is good. But there might be things that you've practiced, and whatever you practice is what lasts. So if you were a kid growing up and you always always did an underhand throw of the basketball, I think of this when I'm like when you're shooting free throws playing basketball and you kind of do through the legs and kind of underhand it to the hoop. If you've always played that way, it works. You might make the point, but it might not be the fastest or the most efficient way to do it. Same thing with, like, an example I use is I get questions about this. I've learned my G chord and my C chords as a kid, teenager, and I'm just used to making that change. That can, trip people up. There's a much more efficient way to do this change by fretting that G chord, this way. That makes getting to that C faster, for example. And I teach people to do that, but I personally find that very weird to do because that's just not how I practiced it and learned it. What you practice is what lasts, and it's difficult to reverse those things that you've learned. And it's really rare that you can get something that's more involved and complex correct the first time. And we want to. We all want to learn those songs and those licks and do those things, but that's just not how it works. Our brains, especially as we get a little older, need some time, and the way that our brain learns things is by sleeping and resting on it. So I do want to do a shout out to a viewer. We had at Deanne Miller 891 had left a comment back on that video I mentioned earlier about some practice tips for older beginners, and talked about how sleeping on it is a good idea. And you'd be surprised, like if there's something you're working on, a pattern, playing that bar chord, for example, or maybe it's a finger style, like the first time you've learned Travis picking. If it's frustrating you, put it away, sleep on it. You'll be surprised when you come back to it of how starting to play that up again and do that is going to start clicking, because your brain has had time to absorb it and those little neural pathways and all that crazy.
Rest.
Yeah, the rest is amazing for your brain. And I don't know about you, the older I get, feel that I need a little more rest when it comes to some things, but eventually to get there. And some final tips for you as you are practicing slowly, isolating those trouble spots, being repetitive and going at a slow pace, is time yourself. I kind of mentioned this earlier. You will be surprised at how long 2 minutes is, 3 minutes is, 4 minutes is when you're practicing something like those chord changes or those picking patterns, or how to palm mute. There's so many things you can practice. Use a timer and set it to 2 or 3 minutes, and you'll be surprised by how far that goes. Number 2 is, once you've slept on it, maybe leave it for a whole day. Could be even a couple of days, a week. And when you come back to it, challenge yourself to work on that trouble spot without looking at your tablature or your notes, and that really kind of helps make those brain connections. And the final thing I'll say, a little tip for you, is be the teacher. So let's say you're working on some blues and you're learning that. Pretend like you're the teacher and you're explaining to somebody else how to do that. So I'm taking my index finger, I'm going to place it on my 4th string, 2nd fret. I'm going to play my open 5th string and that fretted 2nd fret, and that's an A power chord. I'm going to strum down on those 2 strings 8 times. Like when you start saying the things that you're doing, your brain remembers it better, from what I've found. So another tip for you there. So if you're not learning as fast as you would like, put these tips about practicing slowly to get better at the guitar faster to work, and you'll be surprised. Next, check out these 7 myths that might be holding you back from playing the guitar. Some pretty interesting ones in there that you might like, so check that video out next. Remember that Vicki and Maggie and I very much appreciate your views, your support here on YouTube. It's amazing, and we like the comments. Keep them coming. And until next time, also remember, it's a lot of things to remember, that you're never too old to learn, and we'll see you at the next lesson.
Take care.